Okay, hello there. Hi, welcome to another live stream. So my name is Lara Ryan and I'm the founder of Complete Test Success. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been an IELTS examiner for writing and speaking. I've been teaching IELTS since 2010. I've examined for British Council. I used to teach IELTS in the British Council. I've been, involved in the IELTS world for a very long time. And today's lesson, I'm going to focus on grammar. So what we might do is just take a quick look at what the band descriptors mean when they say complex sentences. So a lot of people get kind of confused about what that means, and they think that the word complex sounds like the word complicated, and they try to write very complicated sentence structures because they think that's a requirement, where in reality it doesn't have to be complicated. The word complex sentence, it describes a particular type of sentence. So I'm going to show you what that is, and then I'm going to get you guys to write some sentences for me, and I'm going to give you some feedback. So if you're making mistakes, if you have any problems, that we can talk about them together, and I can point out what areas you need to fix. Okay, so in short, we have simple sentences. So you have that basic, subject plus verb plus object. So that could be something like I is the subject, like is the verb, and the object could be cats. All right. So we could have something as simple as that would be considered a simple sentence structure, but it can become more complicated and still be a simple sentence structure. So if I said something like the man living next to me has a large variety of cats. So here we still have subject plus verb plus object, but obviously that's more complicated. So what we're talking about, simple structure, is basically just subject plus verb plus object. Then we get a bit more complicated, where we have compound sentences. So that could be something like I like cats, I don't like dogs. So that would be two simple sentences, but that can become a compound sentence quite easily. I like cats and I don't like dogs. So that's what we mean by a compound sentence. And then a complex sentence is basically where we don't have that individual subject plus verb plus object like we have here. Subject plus verb plus object and subject plus verb plus object. A complex sentence is where we have an independent clause. Excuse me, a sentence with a dependent clause. And that's all it means. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to have a dependent clause, or it might be a relative clause. Some people call them relative clauses. Some people call them dependent clauses. So let me just take that sentence, I like cats and I don't like dogs. We can turn that very easily into a complex sentence. If I just remove the word I need to remove that comma as well. So if I like cats, so subject plus verb plus objects, and don't like dogs, verb plus object. There's no subject here. So we take the subject I from the previous sentence to help us understand, from the first clause to help us understand the second clause. So that's basically, that is a complex sentence. And you can see that's not complicated. But when the examiner is looking for complex sentences, something as simple as, and don't like dogs, that is a dependent clause. Therefore, this is a complex sentence. Okay, so if you guys have any questions for me about grammar as we go through this lesson, that's fine. Please go ahead and ask. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you guys to complete some complex sentences for me. Okay, so let's see how to do this. All right, so let's say I want you to finish this sentence for me. Although I was studying for the IELTS test, comma. Now, what I want you guys to do is just finish that sentence for me. Finish that sentence, share it with me in the comments. And then if you're making mistakes, I'll be able to tell you what mistakes you're making. Obviously, if you're making no mistakes, I'll be able to tell you that. So finish the sentence. And that's what I want you to do. Complete the sentence, share it with me in the comments, and then I'll have feedback for you. Can you please write the full sentence? Don't just write the second half of the sentence, write the full sentence. Because after this, I'm going to get you to write another one and another one and another one. You know, this is what we're going to do for the majority of our lesson. Will be you guys, you know, finishing sentences, finishing complex sentences, sharing them with me in the comments, and me giving you feedback. As I said, if you have questions about anything, of course, I'm more than happy to answer those for you. But besides that, the main focus of today's lesson is giving you guys feedback on your grammar. Okay, so as soon as you're finished, share your sentence in the comments. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds and then we'll move on after that. Okay, so not getting much participation here today. So let me just show you what we might say. Let's say, although I was studying for the IELTS test, I still had to go to work every day. Something like that. Okay, so let's make this into a bullet point. We'll stay building up on top of these. Okay, let's say this. I am studying for the IELTS test because. All right, there's the next one. So I'll get you to share that, finish that sentence. I'm studying for the IELTS test because. Finish that sentence, share it with me in the comments. And again, I'll have feedback for you guys after that. Okay, so let's say another 30 seconds there. Apologies, there's something wrong with my app today, where the the comments aren't coming through. So I did see some comments from you guys here. Global Football, hi, how are you doing? We won't work on speaking today. So one moment here now. Okay, so I'll just read out the comments. Usually I can put the comments on the screen, but that's not working today. Okay. So Global Football asks, how can I improve my speaking? Well, you need to work on fluency, vocab, grammar, or pronunciation, whichever. You might need to work on all of them. You might just need to work on some of them. But you need to figure out what your weaknesses are and fix those. Lewis, good afternoon. Hi to you. Jim Bear, good evening. Okay, so let me just copy in this one here. Okay, so this was the previous one from Reza. Although I was studying for the IELTS exam, I tried to do my family responsibilities. We'd say to fulfill my family responsibilities as well. So that's more of a, it's not a problem with the structure. So yeah, that works. That's perfect. Thank you, Reza. I have another one here from Jim Bear. Although I was studying for the IELTS test, that's just a spelling mistake, I finished my other works. So that, within the context, that doesn't really make sense, because you're saying although this, so you're trying to show that even though this was something that was happening, I had other stuff to do as well. So maybe like I still had to finish my other work. So that makes sense, but just be careful with, you have to show some kind of a contrast, and that's why the word still helps here, because it just makes it clear that there is in fact some kind of a contrast going on. Lewis. Although I was studying for the IELTS test, my progress was not so quick since I had a lot of other things to do as well. So here with the word although as cohesive device, so this isn't really a grammar mistake. It's more of a, it would be a coherence and cohesion mistake. So although this, my progress was not so quick. Like there was nothing in the first clause, I was studying for the IELTS test. There's nothing in that to show some kind of a conflict with what we would expect. So though you would have to say, although I was studying for the IELTS test a lot, so you were spending a lot of time doing it, my progress was not so quick. So that would be highlighting a difference, you know. Whereas when we use the word although, we're trying to highlight like what you would expect versus the reality. We're not the same. So it wasn't a grammar mistake there, but that would be more of a coherence and cohesion mistake, using although in an incorrect way. Okay, so next I have Jim Bear. Okay, so this one, I'm studying for the IELTS test because I want to study in the UK. Because I want to study. I'm studying for the IELTS test because I want. Not really. I think just the way we're using the word study twice, I think it's more of a vocab mistake than a grammar mistake, because I need an IELTS certificate to study in the UK. So there, that would make sense. Okay, I'm going to move on from this one here because we've got the first example of that, and we'll move on to, let's say, which I'm studying for the IELTS test, and we'll say which, and that's the next sentence. Okay, so that's the next task for you guys now, while I look at your other work. Okay. So Lewis says, I'm studying for the IELTS test because, sorry, now let me get this tidied up. I'm studying for the IELTS test because it's a gateway to a lot of work and study opportunities worldwide. Yep, very nice. Well written. Okay, just give me a moment now. I need to have a look in. Okay. So another sentence here from Reza. Okay, Reza says, I'm studying for the IELTS test because, now with because we don't need a comma. And it's a bit unusual, like where some words you need a comma, some words you don't need a comma, some words you need a semicolon, some words you need nothing. It's you just have to learn each cohesive device individually to make sure you're using it correctly. But after because, we don't need a comma. Okay. I'm studying for the IELTS test because I realize that I need to rectify my weaknesses. Rectify my weaknesses to maybe improve on. More of a vocab mistake. Now, there will be situations where we can use a comma with because, but it's when we have the sentence going the other way around. So if I went like this, if I started with because I realize that I need to improve on my weaknesses, comma, I am studying for the IELTS test. So in that situation, because and the comma would go together when you start the sentence with because, but not when you have because in the middle. We don't need a comma in that situation. Okay. So let me grab the next one. Next one is Min. Hi, Min. Min says, I guess I have learned with you during my course in the forum IELTS. Oh yeah. I'm not sure about the forum. I don't know what that is. But yeah, I've done a lot of work for different schools, so that's very likely. Okay, next one I have Ellen IELTS. Okay, so here we go. I'm studying for the IELTS test because it is one of the mandatory documents that I have to submit for my visa application. Perfect. Good. Okay. I don't have any examples of which just yet. So I'll wait until I see the first example of which, the one that's on the screen. I'm studying for the IELTS test which. I just want to get at least one example of that before I move on to the next. Okay, Reza. Okay, and I have one from Reza right now. All right. So Reza says, I'm studying for the IELTS test, which has also been a challenging task for me. Good. So I would remove the word also because we didn't say this would have to be the second challenging task that you've mentioned. Now, this is one of the problems when we're studying grammar, especially with just one sentence at a time. We don't have the context, right? So normally we don't just have one sentence. We have a full story or a full text, or it's not just one sentence taken out of nowhere. So it's not that also would be wrong in every situation. If you were talking about like, I'm very busy at work, it's been really, really challenging. Also, I'm studying for the IELTS test, which has also been challenging for me. That's fine. If it was the second thing you mentioned. So it's not that there is no situation where the word also would be appropriate. It would be, but as a standalone sentence, without having mentioned something previously, it wouldn't be the right option. So I'm studying for the IELTS test, which has been a challenging task for me. Okay. Now, that, but also, right? So when we look at Reza's sentence, Reza uses the word which to refer to that full concept. I am studying for the IELTS test, and that's perfect. But we could also use it just to talk about the IELTS test, which, sorry, now I'll get there, which is a test that's recognized in institutions around the world, like that. So the word which can refer to the IELTS test or Reza studying for the IELTS test. Both of those are acceptable. But what we see people doing wrong quite often when they're using a relative pronoun like this is they'll try to refer to something that was at the start. So maybe trying to refer to the subject, but it can't. When you're using the word which, it's referring to whatever is next to the word which, be that just the IELTS test or the full scenario of you studying for the IELTS test. But you could not use the word which to refer to the subject I. All right, good. Good job, Reza. All right, let's throw out another one here. Excuse me. Okay. All right, here's another one. Now, these are all complex sentences. So the reason we're looking at this today, like all of these sentences we've looked at so far in this lesson, these are all, when the examiner is looking for complex sentences, this is what they're looking for. These types of sentences, all of these that we've looked at so far are complex sentences. So just to keep in mind, complex does not mean complicated. Everything we're doing at the moment, when the examiner sees that, they see that as a complex sentence, and then for like higher scores, like band 7, 8, 9, where you need to use, a variety of complex sentences, these are the types of things that they need. It's not that every sentence will start with a cohesive device, like although, like it's not that every sentence should start with one of those. But these are just examples of the types of things that are considered complex sentences. Okay. So next I have Daniel. Okay. I'm studying for the IELTS test because universities in the UK require potential students to have an official English proficiency certificate to apply. Very good. Yeah, perfect. No mistakes. Good. And Jim Bear again. I'm studying for the IELTS test, which will help me to get score. No. Which will help me to get a higher score than I got in my previous attempt, maybe. Something like that. And Ellen IELTS. Even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, I always wanted to try out the PTE test. Not really, because you wanted to try it. But I mean, there's nothing saying that studying for the IELTS test means that you can't want to try the PTE test. Okay. So what would happen is, like, maybe you wanting to do something doesn't change, but maybe if you've decided to change, like, even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, I'm thinking about doing the PTE test instead. So it's like, I'm going to stop doing that, even though I'm studying for it and I'm spending time on it. I'm going to stop doing that and I'm going to do something else instead. That would make sense. But you're just saying, I always wanted to. Well, you can continue to always want to do something regardless of what you're really doing. So the contrast isn't there that we need when we use although. So even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, let's say I'm maybe thinking about I'm thinking about doing the PTE test instead, like that. And now we see it more of a contrast with the word even though. Okay, just give me one moment and I'll get back into your writing. Just a second there now. I think there are people commenting on Facebook as well, but I can't see it. Normally everything just comes up on my app. It all works perfectly. I don't need to do anything to find the comments. It's just not working today for some reason, unfortunately. Okay. Ellen, that's so to the point. You're very welcome. Hey, Stan, good to see you. Long time no here. Okay, so Stan, even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, staff shortages, that would have to be plural, in my workplace has immensely affected my sleep, so I have to postpone my preparation. Good. So we just have to adapt that. And that also explains why I haven't heard from you in a while. But good to see you here anyway, Sam. And Reza. Okay. Let's do one more round after this, and we'll leave it there. Even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, I do not have much chance to pass it. Just the vocab mistakes. I do not have, maybe it's not likely. Or maybe I do not think it's likely. I do not have, do not have much chance. So the problem is much chance. Those two words don't go together. I don't have a big chance of passing. I'm going to change it. I do not. Let's say this. It's not likely that I'll pass it. I think that would be more natural and a more natural way to say it. All right, let me pull up one more. We'll do one more example. Okay. All right, this will be the last one of the day. Like I said, if you guys have other questions relating to grammar, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer those for you. But this is the last sentence we'll look at today. I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas. Okay, so it's kind of a combination of, I guess, coherence and cohesion as well, because we're looking at a lot of cohesive devices. Any subordinating conjunctions like this, any relative pronouns. These are all considered, parts of coherence and cohesion. These are all considered cohesive devices as well. So for that reason, I guess a lot of what we're looking at here would relate to coherence and cohesion as well. Like I said, not every complex sentence will have a cohesive device like this. So I'm just giving you an idea of like what is considered a complex sentence. I don't recommend that every single sentence you have has a cohesive device at the start or in the middle, because if you overuse them, that's also a problem for your coherence and cohesion score if you use them too often. So what I'm trying to show you is that a complex sentence doesn't have to be complicated. I think because a lot of the students, especially when they come to me first, they try to write the most complicated sentences they can, like really long sentences where they're nearly afraid to use a full stop. They think that, finishing a sentence and starting a new one means they're doing something terrible and that they're reducing their score. And it's really not like that, So a complex sentence doesn't have to be very long, doesn't have to be very complicated. And I think what I'm hoping is that if you guys realize this, you'll be less likely to push yourself beyond your ability and make mistakes that you don't need to make. Because very often when students join my courses first, both with grammar and vocab, I'm just trying to get them to calm down because they're pushing themselves so far that they're making mistakes they don't need to make, and then they get lower scores than they're capable of. So for vocab and grammar, very often part of the solution is to actually reduce the range rather than expand on the range. Okay, so I have Lewis here. Even though I'm studying for the IELTS test, I still can't answer questions without getting nervous. Why would studying for the IELTS test stop you from getting nervous? I'm going to change this. It would have to be, even though I'm completely prepared for the IELTS test, I still can't answer questions without getting nervous. So we have a contrast between completely prepared and getting nervous, right? You would expect if someone's completely prepared, they have nothing to get nervous about because, they're ready. So that would highlight a contrast, but just saying studying and nervous, there's no real contrast between those. So I would encourage that difference, that edit to your writing. And Ellen, sorry guys, my screen, I should have used a different app. I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas my roommate treats English as a casual hobby, binge watching sitcoms without subtitles. Or maybe by binge watching, right? That's how she treats it, as a hobby. No, because the contrast is you're doing two completely different things. So let's say I'm studying English for the IELTS test. So I'm studying English. Like, for me, the purpose of studying English, it's a more serious academic pursuit. Whereas my roommate treats English as a casual hobby. So that would be a better comparison. Whereas, like, I'm studying English, but it's something serious for me. Whereas my roommate is using English more as something for fun. So the contrast is like the way you study or the way you're using English is different, as opposed to I'm studying the IELTS test and she's watching English TV, where there's no real contrast between those two things. They're too different. There has to be some kind of a contrast when we use whereas. So we would need to make that little difference there. Okay, and then we have Reza. I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas my friends are traveling abroad. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like I'm studying, they're doing something fun. Yeah, that works. Good. So coming into this, the idea was to kind of help you guys with grammar. But in reality, the mistakes that you guys are making are more related to cohesive devices. And like, when we use a cohesive device, the relationship between the two pieces of information, so the cohesive device, like, whereas, although, even though, they're highlighting a particular relationship between those pieces of information. And very often the mistakes that we see in your writing are not grammar mistakes. In fact, there have been very, very few grammar mistakes. In terms of grammar, you're doing very, very well. The problem has been the relationship between the pieces of information are not the correct relationship that the cohesive device is supposed to highlight. So for most of you guys, the problems we've seen have been how to use the cohesive devices and not the grammar, which, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, if you have a grammar mistake, I'll help you with that. If you have a cohesive device mistake, I'll help you with that. But, you know, if you guys have been getting lower coherence and cohesion scores than you expected, this might be the problem, where you're highlighting a certain relationship, but that isn't the relationship that you're highlighting. So there's a conflict between what you say the relationship is and what the relationship really is, that they're not the same. And that would be a coherence and cohesion mistake. That would pull down your coherence and cohesion score. So even if they're not grammar mistakes and I'm changing the relationship between the pieces of information, make sure you learn from that. Make sure you learn from those mistakes as well. Okay, so this one here is from Daniel. Hi, Daniel. I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas my best friend is preparing for TOEFL, the TOEFL test. Yep, good. Yep, perfect. And Ellen, thank you again, teacher. All love from Nepal. My pleasure. You're very, very welcome. Okay, so we'll just wait on another minute to see if anybody has any questions for me. Like I said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have for the next few minutes. If anyone hasn't submitted their sentences yet, please go ahead. I'll still take a look and we'll finish up here in the next 2 or 3 minutes then. If you guys are on Facebook, my apologies. I don't know what is the issue, but the comments aren't showing up for me in my app where I do the live streams, and it is also, they're also not showing up in Facebook itself. When I go into Facebook, I can't see them. So I realize there are a few people who have commented that I haven't actually responded to. Oh, I see here, Pierre. Hello, dear teacher. Hey, Pierre. Good to see you again. Okay, I have it now. Daulat, I study the IELTS course as I will provide an endless opportunity. It will provide an endless opportunities, including work and study. Okay, so let me just drop that in here. We'll take a look at this one. Okay, I study the IELTS course. No, so that would have to be, I am studying. It's like something that you're doing at the moment. If you're finished, you could say, I have studied, or something like that. But at the moment, if you're doing a course, it's something you're doing now. So I'm studying an IELTS course. There's more than one, so it's not specific, as it will provide endless opportunities, including work and study opportunities, or including maybe those for work and study. So mistakes with tenses, mistakes with referencing. So be careful with those things there. And exquisite learning in Nepal. So that's Ellen. Very good. So I see your comments there, and thanks for telling people to jump over to YouTube. Perfect. Okay, so let me just finish up here then. Mayank, I was late, so I missed the train. Okay, Mayank. Daniel, I keep confusing to me and for me when I give my opinion in speaking. It depends on the context. You know, if you say it's important to me, if you want to give my opinion for me, this is what I think, you know, like that. So they have different meanings. You need to learn when to use each. Mayank, how to implement these complex sentences when speaking and writing. So first, just make sure you understand how to use them. Make sure you understand them. And then over time, the more you use them, the easier it becomes for you to implement them. It's just over time. You know, you don't, maybe a little bit in writing is okay, but in speaking, you don't want to go like, okay, I want to use a sentence with the word although, and you have to stop and think for a long time to figure out how you're going to put it together. That's not okay. It should be something that just kind of rolls off your tongue easily. So, you know, continue studying it until the point where you use it effortlessly. That's when you're ready. Ellen, teacher, I have a lot of questions to ask regarding the band descriptors. Yeah, so go ahead. We'll get through a few of them. Sahar, I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas it is not required for the job I am applying for. No. That would be a different relationship again. So that would have to be even though. So I'm preparing for the IELTS test, whereas it is not required for the job, even though it would be like the contrast here being, I would expect you're doing the test because you need it. And even though highlights a fact that it's the opposite of what I'm expecting. So I'm preparing for the IELTS test, even though it's not required for the job I'm applying for. So like now the people are wondering, oh, well, why are you preparing for the IELTS test if you don't need it? So that's even though, not whereas. How much misspelling reduces our results? Reza, it depends how many spellings, how many spelling mistakes, but also the impact. So if you make a few spelling mistakes and I can understand easily, that's not as bad as you make spelling mistakes and now I don't understand what you're talking about anymore. Daniel, for me, focused preparation is very important because, yep, that's correct. Mayank, you're very welcome. My pleasure. Okay, guys, so it seems like that's all the comments. So we'll leave it there for today. I will be back with another live stream next week. If any of you are having difficulties improving your scores and you want one-on-one support, I do have IELTS courses. So just reach out and let me know. There's my email address. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. Take care of yourselves. Good work from everyone here today. Well done. And yeah.